Welcome, everyone. Welcome to this session, the presentation of a new report that talks about the relationship between the Bay Area and Mexico through 7 specific regions in Mexico. I'm Enrique Perret. I'm the Executive Director for the U.S.-Mexico Foundation, and I'm super happy to join this event with our partners, the Bay Area Economic Institute. Sean Randolph has been a tremendous partner in this, and well, he will present the results of the report. But first, I think on behalf of the U.S.-Mexico Foundation, what we expect on this report, our wish is for you to learn something on this very complex relationship, but also with huge opportunities ahead. And all of you entrepreneurs, investors, policymakers, business leaders from this side of the border or the other side of the border, hope you can learn something, and I mean something that you can learn and apply on your daily basis. So thank you very much to participate in this session. It's going to be 1 hour and 15 minutes, a lot of information, a lot of panelists, a lot of experts. So stay with us, and I'll turn the microphone to Sean Randolph. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks very much, Enrique. Bienvenido a todos. It's been a great pleasure working with you on this project. We're excited to be able to share it with people now. And I'll jump right into it because there's a lot to cover and the time is limited. So this document is more than 100 pages, lots of hopefully helpful detail. So I'm going to hit the highest of the high points, but just keep in mind that there's a lot more behind this, and we really encourage you to find the report and dig in. So we had some technical difficulties this morning, so fortunately our friends at the foundation are helping with the slides, and we'll just move ahead. So next slide. Great. So this wouldn't have been possible without a lot of great partners. Our friends at Endeavor and Fundación Idea on the research side, of course, the U.S.-Mexico Foundation as a key partner on the project side, and lots of very important sponsors across Mexico in key states and cities, and here in Silicon Valley. Next. Sort of jumping into it, section by section, this follows the chapters. First, we're looking at the national economy of Mexico. It's the 2nd largest economy in Latin America, the 15th largest in the world, so very substantial in its own right. It's been on an evolutionary path from agriculture and manufacturing, which are still very important, toward an economy that's more based in the past on services. And we're seeing really strong growth in things like telecommunications, IT, and financial services, all of which are very interesting to us here in Silicon Valley. So the national reforms of the mid-2000s opened the door to lots of important things. The competition in telecoms, which has opened the door to a more of a digital economy in the future. Reforms in the energy sector, which is opening the door to clean tech, and through INADEM, really jumpstarting a venture capital industry that's now on its own feet. But with national government support for business weaker now than it had been before, the focus is really shifting, certainly for us, to key states and cities across Mexico that are very focused on developing innovation economies, innovation ecosystems, supporting entrepreneurs and developing technology. Next. Starting with venture capital. And many of you will know this already, but we're really covering the waterfront here. Mexico's venture sector is young, but it's grown a lot, $55 million in 2010, more than $1 billion currently. Most of that investment is seed or early stage. The funds are mostly concentrated, although not entirely, in Mexico City, and as well as Monterrey and to some degree Guadalajara. And most of the deals are in consumer and financial services, And it's interesting, we're seeing a lot of growth capital coming in the last 2 years, which is a significant change. Part of that is due to SoftBank's entry into the market with its $5 billion innovation fund for investing in Latin America, including Mexico, which was really a turning point. And I think it put Mexico on the map as a place with investable growth companies from an international standpoint. And we've just listed here a few of the names of those companies, very high profile, of course, in Mexico, but hopefully becoming more high profile in the United States. And one of the interesting things with many of them is they're expanding often beyond Mexico's market to look to larger markets across Latin America. Next. And here you can just see the tremendous growth, really starting around 2016, and then the last 2 years really being very, very dramatic. And you can see the yellow bar, the late stage funding, which is a relatively new thing, but really spiking up impressively. Next. And here you can see the concentration, where I mentioned Mexico City, Monterrey, Nuevo León, state of Mexico. And if you look at the tables to the right, you can just see this tremendous concentration of the venture activity in Mexico City, followed by Jalisco, Nuevo León, the state of Mexico. You put that together with Mexico City, it's a big grouping, but really interesting things in terms of numbers coming up in Querétaro as well as Yucatan. Next. So looking briefly at the regions in the study, one is the Baja California, the Tijuana, Mexicali, Ensenada region. It is distinctive from the Silicon Valley standpoint because it is uniquely connected to California as part of the Calibajo region. Biggest land entry in the Western Hemisphere, about 1.7 million trucks a day cross the border north, or rather a year, north at Otay Mesa, which really reflects this huge binational economy with large numbers of industrial parks, especially in Tijuana. Engineering is a strength, and one of the themes of this report is Mexico's strength in engineering and the potential that delivers for more technology-related activity across Mexico. So UNAM in Baja California, University Autonomous of Baja California, those major universities graduate about 27% of their students each year in the field of engineering or engineering-related fields, which is really impressive. There's other noteworthy universities, but also research institutes in Baja California. Years ago, when I was living nearby, I would go to Ensenada for a terrific bar, and the port was there. And I was so surprised and impressed to see significant research institutes located now in Ensenada. So looking forward for Baja California, it's still really a work in progress for startups. There's not a lot of venture capital, not a lot of high profile exits, but there's this large pool of skilled engineers, a very large, very sophisticated manufacturing sector that's expanding its base in R&D, which is another important theme in this report, R&D to support manufacturing. And then this proximity to California that really makes the potential around Tijuana unique. Next. So we're moving along the border now, going east. Ciudad Juarez, another extremely important binational manufacturing center, more than 300 maquiladoras. It also has impressive universities and is also developing very interesting R&D centers, often in support of advanced manufacturing, but things like in artificial intelligence. So that represents a really significant investment in the state of Chihuahua and Ciudad Juarez around the future of technology and the future of advanced manufacturing in the city and the state. The startup community, still very small, hard to get venture capital, probably not enough STEM graduates at this point in time. And again, kind of like Tijuana, not a lot of high visibility exits, but looking forward, the particular advantages in Juarez refining are this binational economy, again, linked to the US, that strategic positioning. The city and the state are very strategic in their focus on investment in innovation, growing innovation systems, and supporting R&D and supporting the startups. And the manufacturing base offers a really important platform, I think, for the investment from companies here, but also deployment of innovative and advanced technologies to accelerate advanced manufacturing and R&D in Juarez and in Chihuahua. Next. Monterrey, moving further along. Each one of these places is obviously very distinct. Highest per capita GDP in Mexico, second highest in Latin America. Really, as we look at it, Mexico's premier business center. And again, we're seeing there a really focused effort on the part of business and universities and government to work together to support a growing innovation system. Strong universities, and again, there's this theme, you can see the numbers there of the number of students being graduated there in science, technology, and engineering, and how many of those, 26,000 a year, are at the graduate level. So that is really impressive. Its IT sector is one of the largest in Mexico. These, for the most part, aren't large companies, but it's significant that they're growing. And in fact, SoftTech, which is the largest private technology company in Latin America, is based in Monterrey. I think one of the real assets for Monterrey is Tec de Monterrey, leading entrepreneurial university, very focused on business, campuses across Mexico. Inc. Monterrey, the big tech conference, 8,000 to 10,000 participants a year, very dynamic, and things like the Monterrey Digital Hub that connect the large industrial companies with the smaller companies and sources of digital innovation. So looking forward, like many places in Mexico, scaling is a bit of a challenge for these younger companies, but finding venture capital is becoming easier, and you have this really strong base of local corporations and family offices that are getting more active in venture investing. And again, this large industrial R&D base that's looking to grow its technology capacity. Next. And here you can see on the tech side, this big strength across e-commerce, software development, and mobile apps coming out of Monterrey's tech sector. Next. Mexico City, again, a very different story, national capital, part of the national economy. If you put it together with the state of Mexico, more than a quarter of Mexico's GDP and a lot of its largest companies. Also a huge recipient of foreign direct investment. And it concentrates academic and research talent, both large universities, Mexico's largest, as well as a lot of national research institutes. It's also home to most of Mexico's venture capital funds. About 75% of venture transactions, 80% of invested venture capital is there, as well as leading accelerators like Endeavor. Google's Launchpad Accelerator is there. Latin American headquarters of our accelerator here in San Francisco, 500 startups, and a lot of leading technology companies. And on top of that, the city government is very focused on accelerating the development of digital infrastructure, including digitizing a wide range of city services. Next. And here you can just see the massing of capacity in Mexico City, in Mexico's economy. Put it together with the Estado de Mexico, and you really have an enormous concentration of economic activity. Next. And here you can see funds being raised, venture funds in Mexico City, and you can just see this enormous concentration there as well, and the growth over 2018, 19, and now 2020. Next. So Guadalajara, again, a very different but important story, really the heart of Mexico's technology economy. And again, like these other cities, we're seeing really significant strength in higher education with large numbers of students graduating, but especially students graduating in fields related to science, technology, and entrepreneurship. 40% of Mexico's IT companies, a lot of high-tech companies of all different kinds there. And many of them are global. You find a lot of very significant global multinationals in Guadalajara. But for Silicon Valley, you have companies like Oracle are there, 1,500 employees. They're developing core technologies for the company. HP. Intel, 1,200 employees at its Guadalajara design center. And Intel only has 6 design centers around the world. So this is one of only 6 in the world that are developing the next generation of Intel technologies. One of the big pluses for Guadalajara is it's a 3-hour direct flight from the Bay Area, only 2 time zone shift, and lots of direct flights, at least, once the economy gets going. So looking ahead, the pool of venture capital is still smaller than it probably needs to be, but it's available. There's a growing entrepreneurial system. You have things like Talent Land, another big entrepreneurial focused, technology-oriented conference, things like Startup Guadalajara. So the infrastructure institutionally and organizationally is very much there, as well as something that's really remarkable, which is a sustained alignment between state and city government, universities, and businesses across the board over many, many years and across different political administrations to support the ecosystem and technology growth. They got into it when they started to lose manufacturing to China in the early 2000s and really have pulled their act together to rebuild manufacturing, but move up the technology scale very successfully. Next. And finally, there are 2 other places. We didn't look at these in enormous depth, but we want to have them on the map. One is El Bajillo. There's a lot we could say about El Bajillo, but obviously centrally located in Mexico, a huge manufacturing center, business-friendly policies, an enormous destination for FDI, also with strong universities, a growing number of research centers, and a growing IT sector. And in Yucatan, Merida, attracting more attention these days due to a healthy economy, a high quality of life, appeal there to people in creative industries, and a very positive business and security environment. And they're pushing into the goal of becoming an offshore service center for US IT companies. Again, venture capital pretty limited, good university base, initiatives like Technia, which are supporting startup development, representing a good investment in Yucatan and Merida in the future of an innovation ecosystem. Next. And that just shows the amount of relative foreign investment coming in to El Bajillo. Next. So turning quickly to Mexico and the Bay Area, it's a unique relationship for us. We've got a lot of important international relationships, but it's because of the history of Mexico here in the region, going back to the Spanish colonial era, personal family connections that are very deep, and this move of Mexico toward a stronger focus on technology and innovation and startups. It is opening doors, shifting the focus for us in ways that go well beyond the traditional lens through which US-Mexico economic relations are typically viewed. Investment from the Bay Area in California and Mexico has risen a lot. Most of that going to 4 places, Mexico City, Tijuana, Guadalajara, and Monterrey. Next. You can see it rose dramatically in 2018 and 2019, especially in software and IT services. And most of that investment is coming from companies here in the Bay Area. They're looking for engineering talent, especially in Guadalajara and Mexico City. Lyft opened last year an engineering office in Mexico City. Skycatch, a really interesting drone company for construction, has an engineering team in Guadalajara. Looking at the market, Uber's in 57 Mexican cities. Netflix has 8 million subscribers in Mexico. Stripe just opened its first Latin America presence in Mexico City. Our VC firms don't have a big presence yet, but interest is clearly growing, especially in the last couple of years. And here in the Bay Area, we have a good number of venture firms that are specifically focused on investment in Mexico and in Latin America. And our accelerators like 500 Startups, Y Combinators are playing a very important bridging role here. Stanford plays an important role. I've talked to a lot of founders of Mexican startup who actually are graduates of Stanford. They got started down this road there. A lot of their partners and colleagues were also graduates as well. and a growing number of startups here in the Bay Area that are headquartered in Mexico, but also dual headquartered or headquartered here in the San Francisco region. Next. And you can just see the transactions of the foreign direct investment. The biggest category, software and IT services. And then you look down where they're coming from. Number one, Santa Clara County, that's the heart of Silicon Valley. San Francisco, also major in tech. So the story here is really the major flow of foreign direct investment from here into Mexico is going into tech. Next. So the conclusions. The scope of the Bay Area, of course, includes Silicon Valley. The relationship with Mexico has expanded a lot to include technology, R&D, and a focus on startups. It's a work in progress, but it's gathering momentum. Beyond manufacturing, companies, which is obviously extremely important for companies here are looking for a base of engineering, talent that can be harnessed to support things like sales and customer support and R&D. I think there's a particular moment of opportunity here for Mexico through the US-Mexico-Canada agreement that went into force exactly a year ago, July 2020, especially with global supply chains being realigned now. A lot of that is in the wake of US-China tensions. We have so much manufacturing in China, and there's a growing focus here on secure, reliable, resilient supply chains. And one way to achieve that is by having the production closer to the US. So this is an enormous opportunity for Mexico if it can provide the right conditions. And that means an environment receptive for foreign investment, an environment with security, with the right kind of labor conditions, all the things investors normally look for. But I think Mexico has to be thinking about those things to take advantage of the particular opportunity that nearshoring offers right now because of the changes in global supply chains. We found that the venture market in Mexico is maturing, and venture capitalists here probably need to examine the Mexico market more deeply now and consider investing earlier. And then we find other opportunities at the California level to develop activity with partners in Mexico around climate and renewable energy. The national government isn't very helpful these days, but lots of states and cities are very committed to this. With Baja California, the Commission on the Californias is an important vehicle to support cooperation with the state, including things like a smart border that makes the most of data and new technology to make border crossings for that binational production more efficient. And then finally, there's a big footprint, important ties between the University of California and universities in Mexico. And there are ways to leverage that to support entrepreneurs from Mexico connecting through UC here in Northern California. So that's a summary. As I mentioned before, there is a lot more detail behind that in the report. It'll be available from the US-Mexico Foundation, available on our website. We encourage you to look at that, and we look forward to actually working with you to follow up on the findings and recommendations in the report. With that, we'll move to the next part of the program. I want to introduce Rodrigo Severche, who runs B37. It's a venture firm based here in Silicon Valley that connects large companies and others in Mexico with startups and investment opportunities. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Rodrigo, and your panel.
Thank you so much, Sean. Needless to say, I've been an admirer of the Bay Area Council for a while now. You guys put out some great reports, and being a Mexican myself, I'm happy to finally see a report about Mexico and about the deep connection that exists between the Bay Area and all these different parts of Mexico. And I bet you, at any place you go in the Bay Area, you will find someone from Mexico and from every part of Mexico. So it's great that we're finally kind of doing a little bit of a deeper study. So thanks for inviting me. Just to complement what you were saying, Sean, so our B37 is a venture capital firm based here in the San Francisco Bay Area. We manage about $70 million across a couple of funds and a few SPVs. Our main focus is investing in companies here in the Bay Area and then helping them grow internationally quicker. So, and we do that through the scale of our LPs that are based and headquartered mostly in Latin America, but that operate in about 35 countries around the world. So we've helped our portfolio grow to many of those 35 countries around the world, substantially so to Latin America and specifically to Mexico. So with that, I'd like to invite all of the 5 panelists that will be joining me here to turn on your cameras, and please, I'll try and make this quick and sweet and ask a couple of questions to each one of you, and then hopefully we can wrap this up on time in about 33 minutes. But so I guess the theme of the panel is to continue to explore the relationship between the Bay Area and Mexico. Like Sean was saying, it's interesting to look at it from a VC angle, and we've got a couple of people that do VC on the panel, but as well, you know, there's other opportunities that we've been seeing happen and develop in tech adoption by large corporates or by large technology companies, which we have in the panel as well. You know, Mexico is a growing market just for technology companies to go and sell their products there, startups and larger companies. So we'll hear a little bit about that, and as well, outsourcing of talent, all of which Sean touched on a minute ago. So let me just kind of start with Adriana. I don't know what the right way to say Adriana is in English, but I'll just say Adriana. Adriana, if I can just toss the ball over to you, if you don't mind just saying, you know, a minute or two about what you do, and just talk a little bit about you're in Tijuana. How do you see the connection between the Bay Area and Tijuana right now?
No, thank you, Rodrigo. Adriana Guia, I'm now in industrial real estate. So it's mainly economic development and bringing the manufacturing industry into a region. But I'm happy to see Enrico in the next panel. I worked for Endeavor for 10 years, so mostly entrepreneurship and economic development. It has been key for us to work with Southern California, and now looking into many opportunities with the Bay Area. We worked a program, and hopefully to be more abundant about the subject regarding talent, because we saw an opportunity with the H-1B visas, and looking that many companies that were trying to attract talent into the Bay Area from India, from China, were struggling with this. And we saw that we could maybe bring talent into the northern border of Mexico, and probably bring a foreign direct investment into our region with mostly tech companies, because of what was shown in the report, right? I mean, a lot of engineers now graduating from the schools here in the region, and also bringing a lot of talent from southern Mexico. So this is mainly one of the things that we've been working with, along with some of the key industries that have been life sciences, aerospace, medical devices, among others. And I mean, just to be respectful of the time, 2 minutes you said, right?
Thank you. I would love, Adriana, if you don't mind, if you have like one highlight that you'd say, like, this is a great example of something that's going on between our company or our region and the Bay Area. If you have one that you can just throw out there, that would be great. Okay, sure. So one of the key things that we've been doing is working directly with the economic development councils and the consulates. And it's not mostly the Bay Area, but the type of companies that we think they could work. And we have an example that has been brought from San Diego, which is Thermo Fisher Scientific. This company is in life sciences, and they're based in Oceanside. And they set up an operation here in Mexico, in Tijuana, and they started with 5 engineers. And now we have almost 400 engineers. And they just got a 4-story building. And this is a type of stories that we think we could have an opportunity to also bring, I mean, just go to the Bay Area and probably sell to certain VCs or all directly to the companies as an opportunity for them to grow their operations, and having foreign talent helping them grow into their area. That's a great answer. And by the way, you helped me answer Gregory's Q&A question here. I don't know if you can see it, but he's asking about biomedical manufacturing and biotech, I guess, in general, in this bilateral relationship. So I guess that's a little bit of the answer there. Let me throw it over to Bismarck. Bismarck, I know you're representing Guadalajara today. So again, if I can throw it over to you, and you don't mind telling just a little bit about yourself, and what do you see is relevant or a highlight between Guadalajara, the relationship between Guadalajara and the Bay Area?
Fantastic. So I think technology in general has a lot to add to Mexico and has the ability to grow the overall middle class. But given that I'm carrying the Guadalajara and the Jalisco flag, let's just be very clear. Guadalajara is called the Silicon Valley of Mexico. So if we're trying to tie the bridge between the Bay Area and Mexico, Guadalajara is very, very strong. So we ended up investing in Guadalajara in 2010, in 2010 with my prior company, Uyala. And we were looking for an R&D center, not low-cost development or manufacturing, but just incredibly talented people. And we looked at Southeast Asia, Eastern Europe, South America, and we ended up selecting Guadalajara because of the number of universities. It's a large, it has a large population. There are about 6 million people in the metropolitan area, and there was already a pretty significant base of tech talent. That company, we grew to about 120 engineers in the Guadalajara area. And then in 2014, we started Wiseline, and because of the talent, today in Guadalajara, we have about 750 engineers or designers, project managers that help develop products for a global tech ecosystem. Because of the need for talent across Mexico, we now have over 1,300 tech employees. And today, Mexico continues to be a very important part of our overall strategy and what we're doing.
Very interesting. Thank you so much for that. How about I throw it over to Isabel, who's representing Monterrey today. Isabel, if you don't mind just kind of going through the same, just a little bit about yourself and highlight a little bit of what you see in the relationship between Monterrey and the Bay Area, that would be great.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Well, yeah, I work for Prudenza, a consulting firm. And about Monterrey, well, it's well known that Nuevo León has large companies focused on primary sectors like glass, cement, and banking. But these companies are accelerating the adoption of technology and in their process. The production base, but the market and investment opportunities as well. I think it is important to mention that today there are strong partnerships between Monterrey and California universities, as Sean was saying at the beginning. And it's important. This is an important aspect of Monterrey culture and should not be taken for granted, because educational infrastructure serves as an important base for company formation. And that is very important in Monterrey. For example, the report that is, there's a statistic that I like very much, that 20% of alumni establish a company or go to work to a newly created company within 3 months of graduation. About the culture and of entrepreneurs and the willingness to do business in the area. So I think it is very important.
That's a great statistic. I didn't know about that. Would you say, so, I mean, from your angle, is there, I mean, there's obviously an engineering talent the same way that Bismarck was saying, right? There's this kind of this opportunity for outsourcing great talent in Mexico or in Guadalajara. Do you think Monterrey, or can you highlight another example of maybe how the relationship is going? I know there's a lot of great startups in Monterrey that I think some of them have raised money here in the Bay Area, or maybe vice versa. Is there something that comes to mind there?
Well, for example, I mean, just yesterday I was reading about Credi. I don't know if you know Credi, a base financial service company that raised $3.1 million in seed funding to enable Mexicans who want to buy a house to access the best mortgage rate. So I think that's kind of an example of the business models we would like to see in Monterrey. I think also Monterrey has an inviting environment for startups like retail, e-commerce, fintech, biotech, and health. University-based, the business orientation, and the corporate headquarters that are located in the Monterrey area naturally creates a startup ecosystem. Also, the cross-border trade with the US can also be leveraged to support startups in fields like technology or logistics. I think those are the basic sectors that we can see in the Monterrey area.
Awesome, thank you for that.
And
Let me.
Actually,
Oh,
can I
go
add
ahead.
very quickly something?
Of course.
Now, I would like to say that Monterrey, when Nuevo León is changing governments this fall, and so I think it's a great opportunity for Monterrey to become, I mean, like a center for data and for technology, because we can engage now with this administration into his new policies, and the new platform of the government has, he of course wants to be Nuevo León to be the leader state on economic growth, and he's convinced that we need to do it with innovation and entrepreneurs. So I think it's a good opportunity there.
Yeah, well, and he's a young guy for what I read. I don't know a lot about him, but that sounds exciting. Let me throw the ball over to keep it kind of in the north of Mexico, over to Omar, who's representing Juarez today. And also, Omar, you're with your Microsoft hat today, so also kind of representing, you know, the opportunity that big tech can find in this relationship between Mexico and the Bay Area. So, Same, let me toss it over to you if you can say a couple of minutes about yourself, and then, you know, highlight some of the something that you find interesting in the relationship between Juarez and the Bay Area.
Right. Thanks, Rodrigo, and Sean and Enrique. Congratulations for this amazing report. I'm very proud to represent my region, as well as I am super proud to represent Juarez in the Microsoft world. I would like to say so many things, and I'll try to, you know, compact as much as possible. I'd like to highlight that our region is the 4th largest manufacturing hub in North America. We have more than 330 international companies located here in what is called the Borderplex region, where we also have 70 Fortune 500 companies. In Mexico, Juarez ranks #1 for the number of people that are engaged in the manufacturing industry. That is more than 300,000 people. And more or less for about 50 years, we have evolved from basic to advanced manufacturing capabilities in different sectors, such as the aerospace, automotive, electronics, healthcare, and other sectors, which are important for the Mexican manufacturing. We're currently moving towards a new concept that we call smart border. And that's why Microsoft is here on both sides of the border, El Paso and Juarez. And also that's why since last year, we have been participating in the operation of 5 new innovation centers in the state of Chihuahua. So we have 3 centers in Ciudad Juarez. One is an advanced technologies integration center. The other one is an artificial intelligence center. The other one is a molding and die cast center. In Chihuahua City, recently, we had the opportunity to inaugurate a center dedicated to the aerospace industry. And today, precisely, we're gonna inaugurate another innovation center in the Chihuahua City. These centers, I like to say, that are oriented towards the market and innovation. So these centers were thought to take advantage of the current research and development that we have in Mexico. So for example, one of these centers is going to be operated by the National Polytechnic Institute, which will give us access to more than 30 research and development institutions in the country. No? Another important thing I would like to highlight is, for example, the Artificial Intelligence Center in Juarez, just this year is preparing more than 2,000 people in advanced technologies. So if just imagine the design and the innovation that happens in the Silicon Valley or other places in the United States, if we put those capacities together with advanced manufacturing and a very experienced ecosystem that we have in Juarez, in our region, with all the advantages that that represents, like for example, proximity or the competitive in cost or the specialized talent or high tech oriented culture that we have, we can create so many things. I'm sure that for the United States, there is no better place to transform design into a product or a solution than our border here.
That's excellent and super concise. And thank you for highlighting all of those like very specific competitive advantages, I guess, of the region. Can you highlight, like, does one example come to mind and you would say, like, look, this is something that's happening or that we're doing that is like very concrete, that represents all this that you're stating?
Yeah, sure. So I'm super excited that we currently have these centers that give access to all our population, especially youth, people that are currently at the university level, for them to be able to equip themselves with new technologies. So we're currently preparing our people with 30 of the newest technologies, including AI, machine learning, cybersecurity, data analysis, cloud manufacturing, for example. So we are getting ready for what is called our digital transition. We want to accelerate our digital transition so that we can accompany, what's happening worldwide in regards of innovation, but not losing, our main flag, which is advanced manufacturing. That's how we want to sell our region. And I'm sure, like I said before, that if we could connect Silicon Valley with our region, we could, offer a lot of value added to all these companies that they already have this design, and put that together with us so that we can, convert the design and innovation into something tangible for the markets.
Thank you for that, Omar. Let me toss it to the last but not least of our panelists, because he's representing Ciudad de Mexico, which is where I'm from. So I saved the best for last here. Carlos, if you have your camera on, I can see you, but kind of tossing the same question over to you. Can you please tell us a little bit about yourself, and tell us what excites you about what the status is between Ciudad de Mexico and the Bay Area, and maybe highlight an example of something that you think is interesting for people to know?
Thank you, Rodrigo, and all the panelists. I'm Carlos Flores. I'm the General Director of Corazón Capital. We are a nonprofit and nonpartisan effort with a long-term vision whose purpose is that the city reaches its maximum potential through the collaboration and linking of all government, private sector, and social actors in specific and measurable actions of short, medium, and large term. We are integrated with around 20 companies. As an example, Kimberly-Clark, Grupo Caluz, Grupo México, Cinépolis, Mobility ADO, and many, Grupo Carso, and many others. I will start with something simple, but first I begin to recognize the extraordinary report that you have in your hands. It is very relevant as an effort to identify business and investment opportunities on both sides of the border. But above all, it is a document that unites us and allows us to trigger growth, development, and well-being for people. Congratulations, Sean and Enrique. Let me introduce my city as a city with a great economic and cultural appeal that still needs to develop its full potential. It is the center of the social and political development of the country and has a world-class cultural, economic, and gastronomic offer. However, it faces challenges in poverty, inequality, employment, development, and growth. The city has gaps in competitiveness compared to other national and international benchmarks, which it must close in order to unleash all that potential. As you may know, CDMX is far from aspirational cities such as Seoul, Madrid, or Miami. And in order to compete in attracting investment, it must close various gaps, especially in security, mobility, talent, and regulation. But we have opportunities too. And during the last year, we have been working so close with our government, our local government, and we designed a strategy in order to attract investment in terms of different clusters and different opportunities. First of all, mobility. We are ranked behind Moscow, Istanbul, Bogota in terms of traffic index, and we have a large vehicle park with large traffic flows. So as a global trend of environmental awareness, we are working to enhance investments in terms of mobility. Of course, in terms of green manufacturing, contribution to the GDP of manufacturing industry on this sector is declining from 13 in 1940 to 5% in 1917. So it is a little industry involvement in environmental efforts. We think we have enormous opportunities here. In terms of business support services, we have consolidated this sector. Nowadays represents the 10% of the GDP, of the local GDP. We are working we're working too in retail trade, another consolidated sector in the city. of course, in financial services and in creative industries. We have an example in Vallejo. Because of its size, market, density of assets, and proximity to the national government, Mexico City exerts a gravitational pull for overseas business, including startups. The city is taking further steps to attract both Mexican and overseas business through an industrial innovation zone designated Vallejo E. The project aims to revitalize Vallejo, a historic manufacturing area in the city with a focus on clean and sustainable industries. To reverse a decline due to the earthquake of 1985 and larger economic change, recent measures to stimulate growth through innovation include the Technological Development and Innovation Center in Vallejo, an industry 4.0 laboratory to co-create technological solutions, and a digital prototyping laboratory for materials design and fabrication. With this, I conclude this first part.
No, thank you so much, Carlos. That was very, very deep. I didn't know about I Vallejo. Very interesting. I've got to read up on that. It sounds like an interesting project. To take advantage of the last 13 minutes that we've got here, let me try and do one more quick round, starting with you, Bismarck, if you don't mind. Ever since I moved to the Bay Area about 6 years ago, I've heard about Bismarck Lepe. Like everyone, it's like, oh, you're from Mexico, you should talk with Bismarck. And although we don't have the pleasure of meeting each other yet, I think you kind of represent a forward thinking about, like, you've been in this exchange between Mexico and the Bay Area for a long time. But that's all in the past. Like, what excites you about the future, and what do you think is an opportunity for yourself or for others, maybe in Guadalajara specifically? And you're on mute, just so you know.
If you speak with a lot of enterprise executives, they usually say that, you know, Mexico is pretty slow moving when it comes to tech, but they're a fast follower. So once they decide that technology is something that they need to invest in, you know, then you get, you know, mass adoption of SAP or Oracle ERP or a lot of these technologies. Now you're seeing it with cloud. I think, you know, the bridge between the Bay Area and Guadalajara is very, very strong. I think compared to any of the other cities that are represented or regions represented here, there are more direct flights between the Bay Area and Guadalajara than any of the other cities. There are 3 airports, Oakland, San Jose, and San Francisco. And, you know, now as the world starts to open up, I think that that's going to go back. I think what you're going to see is that more and more companies are going to set up development and engineering operations in Guadalajara, and not just, you know, the traditional IT outsourcing companies, but companies like a Stripe that have set up operations in Mexico City. I think are going to realize that a little bit like New York, where in New York you are competing against media, you're competing against finance, you know, to a certain degree, even the local government. In Guadalajara, IT and technology has become the brand. Same thing with Monterrey. Monterrey, there are a lot of other industries that you're competing against in order to be able to capture the talent. And so I think what you're going to see is that you are going to continue to see a lot more investment. Today, if you take the Alaska flight from San Jose down to Guadalajara, first class is mostly tech employees, but the rest of the plane is still people going to visit their families and or taking a quick hop from there to Puerto Vallarta. But I think more and more you're going to start to see the tech professionals that are investing in the local region.
Thank you for that. Yeah, and I you know, you kind of teed it up so I can toss the ball over to Isabel, because I agree that maybe Guadalajara is more focused on there's less competition for talent, I would say, maybe. So there might be a good opportunity if that's what you were alluding to. So Isabel, do you see in Monterrey, like, is that a good thing, a bad thing? Are there other things that excite you about the future between the relationship between Monterrey and the Bay Area?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, first of all, Monterrey is moving to a higher value-added economy. So, and they have a lot of investment on education. And emphasis on digital transformation, like Nuevo León 4.0. And another thing that I like, and I expect Monterrey to be great on, it's the private sector roles, the private sector, the role that the private sector plays. I mean, I think it is very important because we can work together with the academy and the government, create amazing things like Nuevo León 4.0, for example, or the Technological Research and Innovation Park that attracts R&D talent. And again, private and public sectors work together. I think that's a great advantage for Nuevo León, and they're doing a great job there. And another thing is that they have a young population, have good young population, well educated. That's why I believe Monterrey can be the data science the capital of data science in Mexico. It has all the ingredients: young people, education, the entrepreneur culture. So that's what excites me about Monterrey.
Excellent. And I love these names, Nuevo León 4.0. Carlos, you mentioned Vallejo. Tossing it over to you, Carlos. You mentioned Vallejo and that as a future, something that excites you. Is there something else that you would highlight of the relationship between Ciudad de Mexico and Bay Area that excites you coming in the near future?
Absolutely, because we are the first economy in our country in terms of our GDP, but we have different and high regulatory costs in the city to make entrepreneurship and investment difficult. We have operational and labor costs in the city, and we think we could do better in order to reach our peers in the world. We have in the city an incipient innovation ecosystem that will position it in relation to regional peers. We are in the place 47 in the global startups ecosystem ranking, for example, and we need to attract investment. We are trying to do a great effort in 6 or 7 pillars or business clusters. As I mentioned before, mobility, green manufacturing, financial services, creative industries, pharma, in terms of research and development, and I think I'm missing financial services and commerce in terms of what we're doing right now. But I think we have an opportunity in terms of startups. And as you may know, 500 startups recently founded the first accelerator since 2012 in Mexico City, which today also serves as its hubs for Latin America, including Argentina, Colombia, Chile, and Peru. 12 batches of the startups have been run through the 16-week program to date. It's Mexico-based 500 Luchadores Fund has invested regionally in approximately 100 startups at an average level of US$ 60,000. In terms of e-commerce and digital payments, are particular focus too, with investment in companies such as Confio, online financial services for small business, for example, 99 minutes delivery service for online shopping, Clip, electronic payments, Conecta, an online payment platform for banks and financial institutions, and Facturama, which simplifying a billing process. With the onset of the COVID crisis and the accelerator services moving online, applications have increased 60%. So managers believing that going virtual, open access to the program and its mentors to founders who in the past would have found it difficult to travel to Mexico for a residency. So for a sector with 632 entrepreneur-led companies, there are more than 150 investors and other organizations providing support. So we think we are able to enhance and to make a deep effort to develop startups too.
Thank you very much, Carlos. Omar, in one of the conversations that we had before this call, you mentioned how everyone was excited about government relationships, but the private sector is also very much involved. We see it from our point of view because most of our investors are large corporations. Is that what you see as an interesting opportunity in the future for your region?
Yeah, totally. Thanks to the private sector, we're causing many changes here. So, for example, there is $100 billion of trade between El Paso and Juarez, just as an example. And thanks to the collaboration we have between the private sector and the government, we have opportunities both for incremental innovation as well as disruptive innovation. Also, one example of that is a platform we recently developed that is called the Bridge Accelerator. And this is a binational platform that aims to take advantage of this powerful binational economy that we have in order to create or support especially small businesses or entrepreneurs that they would love to connect to the worldwide industry that we have here. And that's happening because of the support of Microsoft together with different private companies that are making this possible. No? And I know that we have very little time, but probably in the future, I'd love to take a look at the report and check what this Bridge Accelerator platform means, because like I said before, this platform was made for both countries so that we can, support our SMEs and they can, improve their local economy. No?
Thank you very much for that. And then you got to open and now you get to close, Adriana. Some final words about something that excites you about your region and the relationship between that region and the Bay Area?
Sure. So something that is happening in the present, we're rebooting the Calibajo Binational Mega Region Initiative. So it's mostly the collaboration between San Diego, Los Angeles, and then the rest of the state of Baja. And we're also trying to move north into San Francisco as well, because we see a lot of opportunities that could happen in order for us to collaborate as a binational region. And then second, next week, we're also going as a group from this Calibajo region to Juarez, precisely because we think that we're very, very, we're going to be able to work in better results for the northern states and the northern region and Southern California and Southern Texas, working together as a team. So Chihuahua Global and then the Calibajo Binational Mega Region, along with their economic development agencies, are working together in order for making this happen. And then looking into the future, some of the things that we're looking that is going to happen in our region is mostly focusing in life sciences and the growth of the medical sector, because of all the things that have been happening worldwide, right? And this is one of the key regions where most of the manufacturing of the hospitals and all the items that are into the states being manufactured at. So this is something that we're still looking at. And then instead of working as silos in industries, we're looking into transversal industries. So electronics has also been playing a very important role in most of the industry. So we're looking into more focus of this type of industry into a region. And then finally, the trends, last mile operations, e-commerce, that have also been very popular now, and looking into many operations coming into our region. And we see that also happening into the next years. And then finally, medical tourism here in the region. I don't know if a lot of people heard. This is something happening super strongly in Tijuana. People coming to make their aesthetics and anything that has to do with dental. So that's also bringing a lot of investment into a region. So that's not going to stop. So that's mostly it. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Adriana, and thank you everyone on the panel. I think it's been a great conversation, and we're ending right on time. So let me pass it over to Enrico, Carolina, and Andy so that they can continue with the agenda. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks very much, Rodrigo, and thanks to everybody on the panel. There's a lot to talk about and a lot of very positive things, both now and coming for us. A couple things that occurred to me listening. One is that Adriana mentioned the proximity of Mexico to California and the Bay Area, that when I went back to Tijuana for the first time in many years, a couple of years ago, I was really struck. I got on a plane at 9 in the morning. I was in San Diego Airport at 10:20, and the car met me, and I was across the border in less than half an hour. So this was like 2 hours to be in Tijuana, which is quite a contrast to my usual flights, which are like 15 to 17 hours to China or India. Like we were saying earlier, Guadalajara, 2 time zones, 3-hour direct flight. So I think the advantage of proximity is really dramatic, and the opportunity for closer interaction with headquarters of companies here in the Bay Area. Also, Adriana mentioned Thermo Fisher. Although they're a Southern California company, they're one of our members, and there's a feature on Thermo Fisher in the report if you want more detail on what they're doing in Tijuana. Also, Microsoft is one of our members, and Omar's program is also detailed in the report, as is the Bridge Accelerator in Juarez. So, and also Viejo in Mexico City. So all of these programs, or most of the ones that our panelists just mentioned, are written up in the report. So I encourage you to go there to look for more detail. But I think taking away from that conversation, a couple of things struck me. One was that so in rankings of global competitiveness, Mexico generally falls around the middle, but at the top for Latin America. So there's a way to go, but Mexico is moving in the right direction now. And I think the gap is that perception in the US, and especially perception in the Bay Area, needs to catch up with the reality. So it's a work in progress, this move toward technology and innovation, but it is moving. And I think when most people here think about Mexico, they don't necessarily think about startups and venture investment in technology and engineering. And I think that's part of the gap we need to start to address more directly. So with that, I'd like to introduce the final speakers today. And these are more of our very important partners. So Enrico Robles from Endeavor. Welcome, Enrico. After Enrico, Carolina Agurto from Fundación IDEA. And both Carolina and Enrico have been very important partners in our research effort. And after that, we'll hear from Andy Tsao from Silicon Valley Bank. The bank has a deep connection to Mexico, has been looking at it for some years, and we'll get perspective from Andy. So why don't you start off, Enrico?
Hi, Sean. Hi, everyone. Thank you. Sean, I want to thank you first. We are glad to join to this research project and all the support of the Bay Area Council Economic Institute. I think this kind of research are very important to show a new face of Mexico. No, as you mentioned, sometimes we don't address that kind of face of Mexico. No, so I think it's very important, no, to know that there is entrepreneurial landscape and innovation around Mexico. And thank you so much for inviting Endeavor as a research partner. And I think I'm going to share just a few words about specifically about the entrepreneurial ecosystem. And I think at Endeavor, we have witnessed a major expansion and growth driven, as you mentioned, by a booming foreign venture capital industry, fostering high growth entrepreneurs in Mexico. But I think my main point here is what we are seeing right now in this moment in Mexico, seeing that we are minting our third unicorn and over $3 billion invested in Mexican entrepreneurs. It took over 20 years, of hard work from many actors, and such as local funds, support organizations, and the first generation of successful entrepreneurs, that decide to reinvest their experience and knowledge in the next generation of entrepreneurs, acting as angel investor, mentors, and role model. And I think these multiplier effects will continue with these new success stories that will influence the development of new network or what we call entrepreneurial mafias. No, I think this report shows Mexico a new face and the potential that we have to expand our influence and relationship among the Bay Area. And I think the value of the report is that it was developed of the collective knowledge of those who have built this economic growth in Mexico. So I think is my main thoughts about the report and our participation in this report. And thank you so much, Sean, again, for making this report possible and for making Endeavor part of it.
Well, thanks so much, Enrico, for your contributions and for being a great partner in this work. Carolina, how about you?
Hi, thanks, Sean, and thank you, everyone. Thank you, the U.S.-Mexico Foundation. I think that it's been, 1 year since we started with this as an idea, and now see that we have already the publication, the report. I think it's amazing. And so I will not add, I think all the previous panelists, they cover very well. So what are the opportunities and the challenges that we see in the different regions in Mexico? But I want to talk about something that it's a little more broader idea, I think, and is so what are the challenges right now in the public policy area? And we covered this a little bit in the report, and I think it's a very good moment after hearing what other panelists just said. Just to mention like some few ideas that I think that there are some lines and some areas in which I think the ecosystem could work. So as you may know, Sean mentioned this before, Mexico is considered one of the top economies in LATAM that supports entrepreneurs, startups, and the formation of venture capital. And this situation, despite the fact that in recent years, the policies driven by the Mexican federal government have suffered some important changes. So some great policy decisions took a reverse. For example, the INADEM disappearance, the lack of continuity of other sectoral funds that support tech R&D, product creation, and transborder commercialization, among others. However, I think that these decisions pose a big challenge, but they also represent great opportunity for increasing the maturity of the ecosystem. So there are a lot of things that we can discuss. We have a very limited time, but I want to mention 3 elements that I think we must follow up in the short and midterm. The first one is that the ecosystem should reduce its public sector dependence and fortify a sustainable network, leveraging the potential relations with other stakeholders. So now that the public sector aid has been reduced, this situation forces the local ecosystems to build up on the opportunities that can be created by its members and other associations outside the zone of influence, or even outside Mexico. So I think that the release of this report is a clear example of this. It's a one step. But also there are some interesting initiatives that we need to put an eye on. For example, I think this week or the last week, the Mexico's Entrepreneurs Association announced a new initiative that is called Market Entry Bootcamp. And it's one of the first programs designed to support Latin American entrepreneurs to enter in the US market, for example. So, so these initiatives, I think that will be great for creating a mature ecosystem in Mexico. The other thing that I want to mention is that the Mexican ecosystem can take advantage of the current political situation in which the local governments, state and municipal, are creating their own policies in support of innovation, technology, and entrepreneurship. So I think that now that the local ecosystem can be organized, we've seen this as regions, clusters, I think that they could play a very interesting role as an ally and work with the local governments in the co-creation of policies that indeed cover the ecosystem needs. And I think Adriana mentioned this before, For example, let's not think only about direct subsidies, but there are other kinds of supports as human capital formation, work towards the supply chains, expand the financial options and conditions for SMEs, among others. And the third element that I want to mention today is that, so how we focus the interaction of the ecosystem with the Mexican federal government. So we should push the Mexican federal government to co-create demand-driven aid policies instead of passive ones. And so I think the ecosystem as a coalition should raise the flag to the public sector that in order to take advantage of platforms like the USMCA, it is crucial that the government invest in improving, for example, rule of law, regulatory frameworks, from opening a business to tax issues, and to increase the flexibility of labor markets. And this latter, I think, is very urgent since COVID-19 pandemic changed a lot of things. So I think that we need to keep in mind that, because without these conditions, we cannot create or foster investment in Mexico and how it ties with, for example, Silicon Valley.
Thanks very much, Carolina. And that's a great idea to pursue around how to tie a lot of these pieces together. Over to you now, Andy.
Hey, good morning, Sean. And congratulations to you and the Bay Area Council for releasing this very comprehensive report. I had a chance to flick through it, and some great data in there. And I think it'll bring more attention to the connections between the Bay Area and Mexico. But you know, we've had the opportunity at Silicon Valley Bank to be doing business development in the region, Latin America, for nearly a decade now. And while we started our efforts in Brazil, which is sort of still the largest startup ecosystem there, we quickly got drawn into Mexico around this sort of 2013 and 2014 timeframe. And when you look at the report, it really sort of details some of the things that Carolina was talking about with the government stimulus programs through INADEM and Fondo de Fondos that really kind of seeded a generation of early stage venture capital firms, accelerating entrepreneurs through Startup Mexico, and that activity really sort of pulled us into the market, and we found the beginnings of a really thriving ecosystem, and we've been really privileged now to sit, sort of have a seat in the passenger seat, if you will, to watch the how much this market has grown and developed over the last 5-6 years. Of course, we work really close with Enrico and Endeavor Mexico. They've been a terrific partner for ours as well. I guess I'd frame our journey in Mexico maybe in 2 activities that the bank organized with Mexico, and with the help of Endeavor, of course. We organized 2 investor delegations from the Bay Area, venture capitalists, to come with us to immerse themselves in the venture capital ecosystem, because we saw, we were excited about the developments there. And the first one was in 2015. And when Sean, looking at some of your numbers, I think from Amex Cap, that the venture capital invested in that era was probably between $50 and $100 million that year. So still pretty small, pretty nascent. But we saw all that activity again. Maybe some of it stimulated by INADEM and other funding sources. And I think the conclusions we had in that time frame, at least from some of our friends, was that there's a lot of potential here, but it's early. But we kept at it, and we saw, you outlined some of the great companies in the report. Clip, that just raised the $2 billion last week, Kavak and Bitso. I think these are all the new unicorns of Mexico, but they were just pure raw startups. back in that time frame. And in 2019, we organized our second delegation that we called fondly BC to Mexico, with a little hashtag, of course. And we brought a group of investors from the Bay Area. And if you think of 2019, as you guys have already talked about, that was the year that SoftBank really began to become active in the region. And I think ever since that point, the real inflection point, the ecosystem's really just gone on fire. And again, with the the report outlines, over $1 billion invested, and so really exciting in terms of the acceleration of the ecosystem. And I think we're really only just getting going. I guess two other things I would mention. And again, the other panelists kind of touched upon it today. In our second trip outside of working with Endeavor, we also worked with Bismarck and startup GDL, looking at Guadalajara and looking at more and more even venture-backed companies here in the U.S. that are tapping Mexico for engineering talent. And one of the firms, VC firms that came with us on that trip, subsequently in late 2019, brought many of their portfolio companies to Guadalajara to take a deeper look and really to better understand how to leverage Mexico for engineering talent. So we see that increasing as well. It's not just the large companies. And lastly, another thing we pay attention to is the sort of cross-border activity and the diaspora here in the Bay Area. And there's some great folks, whether Rodrigo on today's panel, or Tony Raglio, one of the founder of Keo Networks, of course, Bismarck, Roman Leal. There's a sort of a cadre of investors and entrepreneurs that are really sort of fostering those connections between Mexico and the Bay Area. And I couldn't agree with you guys more in terms of just sort of proximity to the U.S. I think that was, having gone to Brazil many times, it was such a pleasure to be able to be in Mexico City in a few hours and only 2 time zones. So that I think that proximity really has an advantage as well. So summing up, I think the connections are growing. We get inquiries from our friends on Sand Hill Road in the investor community all the time about, hey, what's happening in Mexico, what's happening in the region. I think there's more and more awareness of what's happening. That's driven in part by the growth and some of the great companies that are being built in the region.
Well, thanks very much, Andy. The bank is always a great source of perspective on what's going on with entrepreneurs and startups around the world, but also in Mexico and Latin America. And that was a great way to tie it off. So I would encourage everybody to find the report. Again, it's a long one, but you can read any parts that you're most interested in. But there's lots of ideas and lots of detail. And we look forward to working with you all to think about how do we follow up? How do we sort of raise Mexico's profile in the venture and the technology community here? And how do we start to make more things happen? So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Enrique to close out our morning's program. Enrique.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you all, the audience, and also the panelists, the partners, the sponsors. I really like to think, Sean, that this partnership between Mexico and US, the Silicon Valley in this example with the Mexican cities, knowingly or unknowingly, for the past 25 years have been working in creating a big platform to tackle the challenges of today, right? Today is the opportunity. That's what we believe in the U.S.-Mexico Foundation. That's what we are, that's in which we are betting, right? Through programs like ally shoring. We believe that the pandemic, the tech race between China and U.S., the supply chain resiliency that we need, that's the right moment to go in the U.S.-Mexico relationship. So thank you all. You can find the document in the webpage of the Bay Area Institute, also in the U.S.-Mexico Foundation. Thank you very much. Have a good day.